I'm calling us to order, I guess. We don't have anybody present for public comment, so let's move on to 1.03, which is the purpose of our meeting today, Policy 102. Steve, I'll kick it over to you to get us started.
Thank you very much. So in reviewing the notes that I took from the board meeting last week and correspondence that was received, during the course of the week, I've kind of captured two different pieces to this puzzle. The first piece are discrete tasks that I think everyone is in agreement that we need to do, and I'll walk through the tasks that I've identified. And then if I missed any, we can talk about if there's anything I missed, and we can then add that to the list. And then there are 3 discussion points where the 3 of you need to make some decisions about what direction you'd like me to go as I work on the redraft. So the tasks that I have them, as I have them, are change the language in D1A, which is the section of the policy that says the board will meet a minimum of 1 to 2 times, changing it to 1 or 2 times per month. Again, that's the kind of ministerial, task that I'm talking about. The second, and these are not in any particular order, by the way. The second is the suggestion that we create a method for doing an email blast distribution for the announcement of the opening of public comment. And I will work with Ms. Rich and with DTI to figure out how that can be achieved. I don't have any action taken on that yet, but I will work on that.
Steve, may I interject just for a second?
Please.
On that one? Because Catherine and I did have a little conversation about just the notification, and since she already sends out, there's already an announcement when an agenda is posted for the board or for a committee, that could be incorporated into that announcement. The meeting agenda has been posted, public comment sign up is now available to begin. And then she doesn't have to duplicate any efforts and send an additional announcement. And I thought that made a lot of sense. So right. I don't know if the committee feels good with that.
Then I will check that off the list as completed. Wonderful.
That sounds great.
The next item was a request that I follow up with MABE to get advice on the Open Meetings Act and the community listening sessions. I did speak with MABE. There was a meeting of LEA attorneys and MABE this past week, so I raised it to the group. So not only did I get feedback from MABE, but I also got to hear what some other LEAs are doing in terms of these kinds of listening sessions. The view is that they are public meetings, and so they would need to be announced under the Open Meetings Act, but that because no business is being conducted, there's no concern about a vote being taken, or if we do or don't have quorum, it doesn't really matter because there's no action being taken by the board during those meetings. But they are open meetings that we should be announcing, because if we did have 4 board members attend, then we would have a quorum of the board, and it would qualify as an open meeting. So as long as we're in compliance with the notification period, making the public announcement about it, we should be fine. The next item was changing the input of the request to participate through public comment from an email to a form. This was kind of something we had gone back and forth on previously, and we had settled on the email. I have just to see what it might look like, I have mocked up a form, and I can present it on the screen and share it. This is not a final version. I need to check with DTI to make sure this would even work. But this is what it might look like. And so let me put this up. Tab. And it's just a very simple, what I've created is just a very simple Google form where you would enter your first and last name, your mailing address, your preferred telephone number, your preferred email address, and you'll see that these are all marked with red asterisks to indicate that they are required fields. Excuse me. Asking whether you're an enrolled FCPS student or of school age but not enrolled in FCPS, the date of the board meeting at which you intend to speak. And the reason that question is there is so we don't have to recreate the form over and over again. And this will populate into a spreadsheet, and then we can sort the spreadsheet by board meeting date and then just capture the individuals for that particular meeting that we need. It will help capture that information. The question about, are you planning on speaking on an announced agenda item? If yes, identify the particular agenda, oh, that should not say budget agenda item. That should say the particular agenda item you intend to speak about by item number. If you answered no, then enter not applicable. Provide a brief statement of the subject upon which you plan to speak. For example, you might enter the budget or policy 102. Do you require an interpreter or some other accommodation to support your public comment? Yes or no? And with the yes, please contact the board office to make the appropriate arrangements. And you'll see this phone number. This is the new phone number that DTI has created, so public comments can call this number, and that will be what this number is for only. It will not be. So it's not going to be Ms. Rich's phone ringing off the hook. She's going to have a second number to monitor, but it will direct all the public comments to that voicemail inbox, which was the next action item that I had. So this is the idea of the form as I'm envisioning it. Like I said, I need to talk with DTI to make sure this is accessible to everyone outside of FCPS, and it doesn't require an FCPS email address to access it. But this is kind of what I'm looking at. Mr. Bass?
Excellent form, I think. To me, this captures the information. The fact that questions will be required, we'll get all the information. I think this is excellent. If I have a question, it would be on the last one. There may actually, it will be odd, right? If someone needs an interpreter, for them to be required to make a phone call to request the interpreter. Conceivably, they'll be making the phone call to folks whose native language is English. So I don't know if that will end up being a challenge.
No, and you're right. And this also presents the question of, do we need to have the form translated into another language, which I am certainly not capable of translating this into any other language. We would have to have our skilled folk who do that kind of work do that for this as well. And it would have to be made available in both. And I don't know, I don't know the challenges there. And so that's part of what we need to discuss with DTI. But Mr. Bass, you're right. I mean, how is someone who needs interpreting services going to even be able to complete this form to know that this is who to call for interpreting services?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I think we should at the very least have the form in English and Spanish. And I think it would be easy enough to put the Spanish translated questions right on the same form. That doesn't necessarily answer the question of what we do if they need to call the number to request the interpreter arrangements. But I was going to suggest that we also have it available in Spanish at the very least.
So I do believe that on the current board's website says if you need an interpreter to call Ms. Rich, and it gives the number to call. And that's just there in English. I mean, I assume I don't even know, is there a way to look at our website and have it translated into a different language? I don't know if our website does that. So it's the very same problem that I think, Mr. Bass, that we would have right now. I'm not sure that problem is solved. It still would exist.
Yes, our website translates to language of choice.
Okay.
I mean, I can pause. Catherine, you have your hand.
Catherine?
So my question would be, if it is translated into Spanish and people are answering in Spanish, who's going to interpret? Who's going to interpret that for me? I mean, I took
Well,
4 years of Spanish in high school, but I can't remember it.
fortunately, many of the questions are yes or no. You know, and they're check boxes. They're not, you know, and it would be yes, C. So you would get the answer, I think, in both. You know, the demographic information, name, email, phone number, mailing address, I think is what would all be okay. I think the only place where you might have some issue is really with the brief statement about what you want to talk about. And I mean, we would have to, you know, we'd have to call upon our language line, I guess, to help translate that. I don't know. It's an interesting question.
I guess briefly, perhaps someone can just write in what language they need interpretation for, right? Like, I'm just not convinced that they have to make the phone call, right? The phone number can be there if they need further assistance, but right, someone could write in, you know, Spanish or ASL or etc. It could be just that they're filling it in.
And Mr. Bass, I thought about that, and I went this route in creating this version because I was trying to reduce the number of questions, because that adds yet another question. All right, so we are going to admit we have someone from the outside who is looking to join. Her is April Montgomery. I will admit her. But Mr. Bass, I can certainly add another question to the form, and have that question be, if you answered yes to the prior question, you know, describe the language interpreter you need or the other accommodation you need. And then if you answered no, write NA, not applicable. I could certainly add that as another question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm getting into logistics that are perhaps beyond, but the other option would be that this not be a required question. And it's there and people fill it out if they need accommodation, but it's not a required question. You know, so folks who don't need interpreter or other accommodation don't need to necessarily fill it out.
Okay. And that actually may make the most sense, is move that into the instructions section. If you need an interpreter, you know, just go right up in the instructions and skip this question. That may be the best way to do it. So that is the gist of the form. I mean, like I said, not final. Still need to check with DTI about how to implement this in a way that actually will work. But this was just something I was kind of mocking up just to give us some idea about how this might work. All right, so I will stop sharing my screen. The other ministerial tasks that we had identified during the meeting, at least that I had taken note on, was the new phone number for the voicemail, which we've already discussed. Add the phrase "or designated on the website" in the section for the intake on public comments, and then add that written comments will not be responded to the same way the oral instruction is given, that oral comments will not be responded to. So those are the discrete tasks I had. In your notes, did I miss any of the discrete tasks that you understood there to be? Mr. Rose?
While we're still on those tasks, I just had a quick question on when you apply to speak, are we going to offer another alternative? I love the form. Are we going to also offer the phone?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
To sign
Great.
up for public comment?
Yes.
Yes. So Catherine has established, I think it's a Google Voice number, or we have a distinct number that people can call and leave a message with the same information. And it is not her primary number. And it will have a timestamp of when that call was received. And so that way we can prioritize. If we continue to go down the road of first come, first serve or sign up, we'll have the email form that'll have a timestamp, and then the phone calls will also have a timestamp so that way we can make sure people fall in that order.
Oh, you froze. So I guess I'll continue my question. Will that phone number have a pre-recorded instruction message, just
Yes.
like our form? Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
And while Ray remains frozen, the one thing that I neglected to add to the form that I will add to it is a space to attach a submission of a written comment as well, because you can attach, create a space to upload a document. And so if someone wants to submit the written comment that way, they should be able to. They can do it that way as well.
Am I back?
You're back. Welcome back. So
Steve, before we move on, should we just pause? Ms. Montgomery has joined our call, and I don't know if she wanted to offer public comment. I know there was some confusion about in-person versus online, so maybe we can just pause. Ms. Montgomery, did you plan to offer public comment this morning, or were you just joining to observe the meeting?
I'm just observing for the delegates and the senator and the general public, but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add at the moment. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. And the meeting is being recorded. I'll just offer that caveat as well. So let's continue on.
So if there are no other tasks that I missed, I kind of captured the remaining comments in 3 discussion points. How to deal with the interpreter challenge. The challenge being, we're asking people to request an interpreter as 10 days in advance, because that's how long it takes. But for public comment, we're saying, they could ask for it 2 days in advance. And how do we navigate that? Mr. Bass, you had asked that we reconsider the discussion about whether written comments need to be submitted as a PDF or if they can be submitted in another form. And then lastly, we have the broader discussion around public comment, and that really has 3 parts to it: the pre-registration versus same-day comments, the speaker slot allocation, and the discretion in extending, whether we want to include discretion in extending the 60-minute time limit, or whether we're going to be hard and fast about that. So those were the 3 discussion point areas, one with 3 subpoints that I had identified. If we can start with the interpreter challenge, how do we, I don't know how to navigate this really, because there is a structural barrier to us in having, needing a sufficient time in order to get an interpreter available. And that time generally exceeds the amount of time that the agenda is posted to board docs.
So we had some preliminary discussion about whether it was possible for us to post the agenda items to board docs 2 weeks prior to the meeting without all of the attachments, but just the agenda topics. I don't know, Catherine and I had some discussion about that, and she explained some of the challenges with potentially getting that agenda up so much in advance. I'm not sure, Steve, if there was any additional feedback from the superintendent's office about that time frame. But other than that, I can't think of a solution either. If we do establish our quarterly agendas, but things also change and come up. So
Dr. Dyson was, somewhat concerned about our ability to meet a 2-week ahead deadline. We are often pushing that 1 week ahead deadline, and then making amendments to it after it's been posted. And so, I'm not sure that it's realistic from an implementation side, honestly.
I'm trying to think, I had asked some questions about the quarterly agenda, and I do feel even in yesterday's meeting, we discussed the quarterly agenda in more detail than we have in previous meetings. So I guess a thought is if we can continue to discuss the quarterly agenda in a really explain what's coming up, would that solve some of this? And am I right to say that any major agenda item is going to be on the quarterly agenda at least the meeting before, that we can give the public a heads up at the meeting 2 weeks prior? These are the items coming up, not just on the quarterly agenda, but in fact at the meeting in 2 weeks.
I think in all likelihood, yes. I wouldn't want to write that in hard and fast stone because you never know when something big is going to happen in our world. I mean, nobody knew COVID was coming, and then all of a sudden, boom, we were all home working and educating our children remotely. And so you really do never know what's going to come. So I wouldn't say 100%, but I think realistically, the vast majority, yes, probably we would know the big ticket items far enough in advance that we could remind the public that this is coming.
I think that's some of how we solve this, to be really transparent in the prior meeting. Here are the upcoming items in both, work session, I guess, is outside of it in the sense that we don't do public comment in work. So here are the upcoming items in our next board meeting. I think that could solve some of this issue.
Catherine, are the quarterly agendas public facing? Where are they on the website? Because I'm not sure I know where they are.
Well, I don't think they're on the website. We have them on the F drive, under the superintendent.
But they're posted on board docs, like last night's discussion of the quarterly agenda.
Oh,
is
it's inside of. Okay, so it's not a button that you can just push.
No.
And they live there. It's to Mr. Bass's point, on each agenda is like the most. Okay, thank you.
So every meeting has the quarterly agenda and what's coming up.
Got it.
There is also a private quarterly agenda that gives what closed session is and things like that.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I mean, I guess, so I think that could potentially solve part of the issue, but then we're also talking about potentially extending the sign up window for public comment then. So if we're saying you can, which would maybe complicate the sign up process a little bit too, because we were talking about you can sign up starting when the agenda posts 5 days in advance. But now if we're saying people who might require an interpreter can sign up based on the quarterly agenda, then we're going to have to think about that time frame a little bit differently.
So, I mean, would it make sense to not have a opening of the public comment sign up period? Just let it be a rolling, but that the time to submit for the next board meeting would close by 3 p.m. on Monday before. So there's a deadline. So Ms. Rich is able to process the requests that have come in, but it's not, but they're able to say, well, you know what? I know that on the August 9th meeting, there's going to be a discussion of whether Mr. Rose should paint his ceiling purple. I want to give comment on that. And, I know that I want to give comment on that because I don't like the color purple. I prefer the color blue. And so, I want to submit now for it. I hope you don't mind that I'm redecorating your home, Mr. Rose.
No, it's quite all right. Kelly Green is my favorite though. So just
love Kelly Green.
Well, I would say from an accessibility standpoint, the advantage of that may be of assistance is you could pre-populate the sign up to list all of the established board meetings. So the board has already identified the meeting calendar for next year. You could pre-populate the sign up to list, like a drop down, and the sign up could never be opened. It's always open. And the only thing you're doing is setting a close date. That might help administratively and may help actually the public who has to sort of look up in the date and figure out the date. If we've pre-populated the dates, that could assist them in some way.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the least complicated way that we can still meet our objectives. And I guess one of the concerns with just having it always open is if we are doing a first come, first served basis for sign up, I worry a little bit about how that might complicate things, particularly for Catherine.
Well, you would essentially, so if it's first come, first serve until the slots are filled, you would then really be able to pretty consistently predict that you're going to have to apply that sort of the approach that we've discussed about prioritization. That would be sort of you would have to anticipate that would have to be regularly applied.
I'll only say keeping it open all the time sounds like a lot of work for IT to be able to, if it's a drop down of the date, if it's open all the time and you decide I want to speak on the 9th versus the 30th, then internally the system's tracking how many people signed up for the 9th, while it's also tracking how many people are signing up for all the other subsequent dates. So I just worry that's a lot of work for the IT people to program that it's constantly tracking.
It depends on what the ultimate form actually uses. If you do a Google form and you do what Dr. Sergo suggests, which is a pre-populated set of dates, I mean, it populates into a spreadsheet. I mean, that's just where the information goes. And so there's, IT is not doing really much with it. It's just when someone enters, it's just going to add another line. It would require Ms. Rich to, kind of sort it from time to time. So it's sorted by board date. But I don't know how much IT would have to manage. Although, again, that also assumes that we use a Google form. I mean, it may be that IT comes back to me and says, Google Form's not really the best platform. Let's do something different. Let's do a different version of this idea.
I think my preference is to have the dates there so people know when our meetings are, but to open the sign up about 5 what if we said 5 days in advance? It feels like I think dates months in advance might get fully booked in ways that I don't think are. I don't fully share my colleague. I think my colleague, Mr. Johnson, was speaking about wanting to ensure there's lots of same day sign up opportunity. I don't fully share that, but we want to ensure that there's some, right? And we want to ensure that folks aren't reserving their spot months in advance. So yeah, I think pre-populating the dates, but I still think opening it up 5 days before is the right approach.
So then that brings us back to the question of with the interpreters. And I mean, I think that leaves us with the only answer is if you require an interpreter and you try and get in there on the 5th day, on day 1, so we have as much notice as possible, and we will do our best to get an interpreter there for you. But if we are unable, we'll let you know, and that will just, you'll be on the list for the next, for the next board session.
Might I offer a bridge between where we're trying to go and where we are for consideration? So the current approach to interpreters that's on the website essentially says, if you need an interpreter for an upcoming board meeting, please contact Catherine Rich. We need 10 days notice and 5 days, I think, if it's Spanish. Is that accurate, Catherine? I believe that's what our say. So regardless of public comment, we don't want people just coming to our board meetings to speak. We want them to be there to be able to participate and engage. And so I would argue that we should keep with that approach. That if you are someone who needs an interpreter and you plan to come to a board meeting, regardless of whether you plan to do public comment, please let us know. And we're going to continue with 10 days for most things. I think 5 days is what it says for Spanish. And then if you happen to sign up for public comment as well, and you get selected, then great. But if you don't, then, I mean, I'm just wondering if we're maybe over restricting it and we could just use what we already do, but not make it so tied to public comment. Does that, am I articulating that clearly? I hope so. We want
Yes.
people to come even if they need an interpreter, regardless of whether they're engaging in public comment.
I agree.
So we could actually just incorporate the language that's already on the board website that says it's 10 days. If you're coming to a board meeting, give us 10 days notice, 5 days for Spanish. Catherine, have we had any issues meeting any requests that are made? Is the 5 days something we need to look at, or is that working for Spanish?
So the one time that I had to get an interpreter in my 2 years here, the people didn't show up, but it was an issue because it was only 2 or 3 days in advance, and they had trouble securing interpreters. So even at 5 days, they don't guarantee an interpreter.
Right. So either way, if we went back to the 10 days overall, because I think our experience here centrally has been 5 days is not often filled. That's why we go with the 10. And we just say, if you're coming to a board meeting, don't wait for public comment to open and your sign up to ask 10 days in advance so that we can make sure we accommodate you. That would be my suggestion.
So it would really only require a minor edit to what we had drafted in the proposed policy, excuse me, so we can match the language that is currently on the board's website, which incorporates the 5 days for Spanish, which we do not currently have in the policy. So, I mean, I can make that revision. That's relatively easy and straightforward. So the second issue for discussion point was, Mr. Bass, you had requested that we reconsider, the requirement that written comments be submitted using a PDF as opposed to some other, format. The rationale for using a PDF was that it's a static document. It's not impossible to change it, but it is harder to change, and it would protect the board from any concern that the comments that become part of the public record have somehow been modified. What I don't want is for someone to submit something, then look at it on the board website, see that it's not exactly word for word the exact document that they submitted, and then someone, become upset that their public comment has somehow changed. And the use of a PDF, is intended to preserve that. And it makes it easier for Ms. Rich when she has to move those from however it is she receives them, the email or through the form. It makes it easier for Ms. Rich to be able to just move them into board docs. That was the thinking.
Yeah. One option could be a statement, written public comment in PDF strongly preferred, something like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to this, but it comes down to what is more likely or what's going to happen more frequently, that someone submits public comments and I don't know, accidentally a single word gets changed or something as we're uploading it, and we're accused of changing someone's public comment. I think, not to say that can't happen, but I think what would happen more frequently is someone, I don't know, has an old laptop and has much more access to submit something on Word or maybe directly by email, and less so by submitting it by PDF. Yeah.
Catherine, can I ask an administrative question? If somebody sends a comment and they send it in any version of an attachment, let's say they send it as a Word doc, maybe they converted from their Word or Google Doc to a PDF and that's attached. I mean, when you're uploading to Board Docs, what exactly are the steps that it takes you to do that? And, can you receive things that are not PDF, or is this going to be an administrative hardship?
So my process, if I receive it as a PDF, is I drag and drop.
Okay.
Drag it right over to Board Docs and drop it in. If it's a Word doc, then of course I have to create a PDF and then I drag and drop.
But if I hear what Mr. Bass is his interest is, if it comes in as a Word doc, it would take you one additional step, which would mean you'd have to convert it on their behalf. But what if somebody sends it as the body of an email? That we're saying that we have to say that's not a format we can accept, that it has to be in some attachment, in some word processing software attachment. Is that accurate?
I would rather it be that way, yes, because I don't want to have to then create a Word doc, then create a PDF. It's just too many steps. And if I'm getting the hundreds of emails, I would rather it be in an attachment.
So, Mr. Bass, would that address your concern if we said we prefer PDF, but if you send it to us in as a Word attachment, we would receive it? Would that address your concern?
I'm very comfortable with that. Yes.
So if we're going to go that direction, then I think we need to be very specific that it needs to be a Word doc with a .doc or a .docx extension, because while Office is easily the most predominant word processing system, there are others, and part of the beauty of a PDF is it's accessible across any system, and it's like I said, it's a static document. I don't know what other word processing systems that are out there. I mean, years ago, my father loved Lotus Notes. That was his preferred word processing system. When I started in law school, I actually used WordPerfect because WordPerfect was really designed for lawyers. But WordPerfect has gone to the wayside. We don't know what's going to come next as the next, ChatGPT word processor. And so whatever that format is, I think we would need to be very specific to say it has to be a .doc file, a Word file, not just any generic word processor.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
All right, so I can make updates to the policy, the proposed policy based on that. And that brings us to the last section, which is really going to be kind of the most, not that we haven't had robust conversation already, but it's going to be the most robust section. Before we jump into this last section, for the 5 individuals who have recently joined, I just want to make sure you're aware that this is being recorded, and so your presence here will be reflected in the recording. And if you're not comfortable with that, please feel free to jump off. And once we have, because there was some confusion about the whether this was a hybrid, a virtual, an in-person meeting, we will reopen the public comment period at the end, so you have an opportunity, if you're here, to give public comment. We'll make sure you have that opportunity again. So turning to the last discussion point, and that was really about the public comments themselves. And there's 3 pieces to that. There's how do we balance pre-registration with same-day comments? How do we allocate the speaker slots? And what discretion do we want to give in extending that 60-minute time limit? If we choose to accept the same-day comments, we need to talk about what the process will be. That was a question that I believe Ms. Yoho had asked, and we didn't really have in our policy what the process would be for accepting same-day comments. Right now, we have same-day comments are a fill in the leftover if there's any unallocated spots. We've heard some voices that, Mr. J in particular, and I believe Ms. Allen, who've indicated they would like to have the ability to have individuals walk in on that day and be able to present comments. I turn the floor over to the members of the board to kind of give me what you're thinking.
I guess I'll go first. I do understand the concern of that there could be meetings where there is no opportunity to sign up on the day of because it gets filled. So therefore, how would you know that? You might show up at an hour before the meeting, hoping that there'll be a slot available to sign up. You get inside and discover that there are none. So could we set aside a certain number, however small, but a small number of slots for specifically day of comments? That's my only point is that, could we set aside a small number that we guarantee would be available on day of?
I mean,
So-
I would, go ahead.
Ms. Gallagher.
Yeah, I struggle too. I mean, I think that if we were to do that, I think it would be a small number, maybe 2. And we would have to pull them from our, list of our reserved slots that we've outlined in the time frame. And at least, maybe we could do that as people are getting comfortable with the process of having to pre-sign up. I think what we're trying to accomplish with revising this entire policy is that we can hear from the public and still be efficient and effective in our meeting time. So I hear the concern. I'm hoping as we implement that the public will get accustomed to the process for signing up, and maybe there will be less concern with the same day. And I think the other thing that I want to continue to reiterate to our colleagues is that action items on agendas will always have the opportunity for public comment as well. And so when we have those action items, and particularly those big things that that people might want to offer a lot of comments on, there is still that opportunity for us to ask for comment before we take our vote on any action items. And so maybe that'll alleviate some of the concern with not having the same day walk-in, particularly when there are topics on the agenda that we'll be voting on that people might want to be able to offer comments. That's just my thought.
So may I suggest something that might be a bit of a radical change from the direction that we had gone in? And it's based, I think, upon, Ms. Gallagher, something you just said. We had allocated 10 slots for individuals who want to speak on board agenda items. And that original suggestion came because, of the observation that the vast majority of our slots, of our public comment, do not tie to an item that the board is doing as part of its business or addressing as part of its business, and wanting to get feedback on those business items so that can be considered when the board makes the decisions it makes. But as you said, anytime there's an action item, there's always another opportunity for public comment. So if I'm there to speak on, board agenda item 1, do I really need to take up an open public comment spot for that? Or are we better served by having that person speak during the action item on board agenda item 1 and leaving the public comment spot for anything? So we could take some of those slots that we had allocated for board agenda items, and we had 10, we could very easily say, we will reserve 5 for same day comment, and allocate the rest for for pre-registration. 10 pre-register, 5 same day, and that would allow for individuals to still walk in. We've uncoupled it from agenda items, which was something that was raised as an item of concern for some of the board members. I mean, maybe we don't need to go that route.
Well, and I would just also say, I think it would make it easier for Catherine then to administer the assignment of slots so that she doesn't have to cross-reference what a person wants to talk about. And the reality is sometimes people are not that elaborative in saying what their topic is going to be. And so I think if we can lift that load off of Catherine and just say 10 in advance and 5 in person, that seems like it might be an appropriate compromise between all the different interests, but defer to the board.
I'd say let's try it. I agree. I mean, I think that it is a good compromise. It takes into account some of the concerns that we've heard from our colleagues. And you're right, Dr. Sergo. Sometimes we have people who come to offer comments on multiple things in their same 3 minutes. And so that could potentially alleviate some of that concern. And because they will have an opportunity to speak on action items, they still, I mean, people could actually offer multiple comments in the same meeting if we have multiple action items. So I'm comfortable with that direction. If we did 10 pre-registered, no tie to a particular agenda item, 5 same day, and we still have the action item comments for people to make. David, Dean, any concern?
Just a small, I like that idea, just a small concern in that I have felt strongly that people that want to come and speak on an information item that's on the agenda, we're not taking action on it, but it might be something we'll take action on in 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I feel strongly that those people at some point should have an opportunity to speak. If it's not an action item that week, but we're discussing it, we are not guaranteeing them any opportunity to speak on that item. They could well easily get beat out. That's only been one of my concerns, because I've always felt strongly that if we're discussing something on the agenda, but we won't be voting on it that particular week, I want to hear from the public, because, a lot of times if we say they can speak on the night of action, but let's be honest, a lot of minds and votes are made up by the time they have that opportunity. So I have some concern that I like allowing people who want to advocate on an item that we might vote on weeks in advance, weeks later. I don't know. Will it be an issue when we're allowing 10 slots plus? If the student slots aren't all taken, there'll be even more additional slots available. Maybe it's a white whale. It's not that important. But it's just something I've felt strongly about, giving people an opportunity to speak on information items that may later come up for a vote. That's it. I like the idea of just taking that, I understand the ease of service and making it easier. I do like allowing 5 same day signups. I think I like that. I think that's a compromise with those that want that. And I think it's good for the public as well to know, like I talked about earlier, they know every meeting there will be 5 opportunities for you're going to come and be there to sign up. So I'm just my 2 cents.
Well, and I think the more we lean into the submission of written comments, because written comments don't have a time limit, right? And so I think also we want to really encourage people to submit written comments because they aren't limited by time, they aren't limited by schedule, and they have the opportunity to be elaborative in their position and their description of their concerns or their interests. And so I just think we'll have to, that's sort of a culture shift that we will have to encourage people to do, but to say, we want to actually hear from you, so much so that we want to memorialize your comments in ways that don't involve you coming, so that we can receive them. So I think we also have to emphasize that as well.
And that actually makes me think of another thing, is I would also like to lean into the community listening sessions that we're going to offer, because that is truly an opportunity for our community to come forward and advocate on things that may be months in advance that they see on the quarterly agenda, and they think it's interesting. So I like that. I appreciate that comment. And I think we're going to, through this new system, we are going to open up more avenues for people to be heard on a variety of issues. So I agree. I feel like it's less work if we just say there's 10 slots available. There'll be the student slots available, and if they're not filled, they'll be filled by people who apply, and we guarantee that there'll be 5 slots available to sign up night of.
And I would say last night is more of what I think we've had most of the year. I think we had 12 people signed up for public comment last night. I was I said to Mr. Blivis, I said, you started at a point where we were at our pinnacle of public engagement. I said, standing room only and lines out the door, I would say are the exception. And so I actually would predict that, barring very polarizing topics that generate a lot of interest, we would probably be able to accommodate most people who want an in-person slot, with some exceptions. And that's where the written comments will really be helpful. I actually think we're going to hear from more people with the written option as well.
And I also think that we're pretty good about offering, let's use the best example, which is redistricting, is we offer a number of forums for people to come and be heard. So it's not just board meetings. When we hit those tough topics, we do offer community outreach in order to allow somebody to comment. So I'm fine with the suggestion. I appreciate talking through it.
Mr. Bass?
No, I think it's a good change, and more open-ended in that way.
So one of the other pieces of feedback we received was eliminating the preference for student comment. We have reserved 5 slots for student comments, with any unfilled slots being then rolled over to same day comment. Last night we had 1 student speaker, so that would have been 4 additional slots that would have opened up. I understand the interest in eliminating the student piece of it and just allow it being open, and if students sign up, a student signs up. I do believe students are our customers in addition to their parents, and hearing student voice is important. Getting the student involved in the process is important, not just for the board to hear their voice, but for the student to gain that experience. So I do see value in it. But it's not my decision. It's your decision as to whether we want to make a change to the student piece, and whether that's to still prioritize them or reduce the number of slots that's allocated to students. That I would defer to, of course, to the 3 of you.
I have a preference to keep the student slots, because I think it's a great compromise that if they're not all taken, then those are additional slots that people could sign up for on the same day. So I think my preference would be we keep the student slots. In particular, there might be items or times when we really do want to hear from students about, we always want to hear from students, but there might be particular times where we really want to hear from students about the impact of some of our discussion and action. So my preference would be to keep it, with the caveat that if they're not all used, like in situations like last night, that those additional slots could be taken up by community members or parents or whoever else might show up to the meeting. So that's my preference.
The current version has the unused student slots rolling excuse me, into the pre-registered. Do we want to change that to roll into the same day?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction.
I think it's hard to do the pre-registered though, because if people have been notified that they haven't been selected, but they could come just in case, I don't know, that's a weird, I think it would be better for same day.
Yeah, I think it would need to be, I think it would be same day, because I think that would be pretty hard to manage because it closes Monday at 5 o'clock. We know we're only going to have two student speakers. So 3 more slots would open up for same day. I just think that's the easier way to.
I mean, I would defer to Ms. Rich if she has an opinion. I mean, to me, if we see there's only 2 students, then Ms. Rich knows that she has, 13 pre-registered slots to fill instead of 10.
So my issue with this is if you get 5 students, if you get 7 students that pre-register, we take 5, and then we have a student come in on in-person day and register. Where are we going to put? I mean, what about those other 2? Or are we going to prioritize that student that came in and registered in the evening? Are we going to prioritize them to speak when the pre-registered students speak? I don't know. It seems like a lot.
And that may be some of the motivation for taking the student piece out of it. Just, it makes it easier. And we're treating everyone the same. If they register, they register. If they don't, they don't. And, we don't sit there and draw that distinction. It may make it easier to administer. It may deprioritize student voice, but at the same time, we don't have a system right now that prioritizes student voices, and we're still able to hear from students. To me, part of the prioritizing the students was to make sure that they're heard earlier in the day and they're not sitting there till 11 o'clock at night. But if we're no longer doing comment after the end of the board agenda anyway, then that burden is eased. At the same time, I still see the value in making sure students are prioritized. So, I mean, it's not an easy decision.
I think that a majority, maybe all of the board, have said, we want to hear from students. And I think there's a specific way of highlighting student voice and ensuring that we're hearing from students by having this specifically called out on the agenda. I would wonder if a lot of students don't realize that they are welcome to speak in public comment. And I really like preserving some slots. I think 5. I guess I could be open to less, but I think 5 slots for students at the beginning of this. Tough calls on what we do if more than the 5 students show up and how that works. But yeah, I really would love to see us preserve a student public comment section.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I have to sign off the Zoom at this time, and I look forward to us moving this all forward. Thank you, everybody, for your work.
Thanks, Mr. Bass.
Thank you, Mr. Bass.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to.
I also support maintaining the 5 slots for prioritized for students. I think that also gives our student member of the board an opportunity to engage with their stakeholders. They, again, as Steve said, coming from the business world, I look at our students as our customers and our parents and community as our shareholders. And so I think it's fair to prioritize them with what we've already done, in that if they don't fill it, they'll roll over into normal public comment. I'm comfortable with that. I'm also, let's say in the rare occasion that we have 7 students attempt to sign up, 5 is full, I'm perfectly comfortable with a student showing up and signing up for the now available 5 slots and being allowed to speak during public comment.
Mm-hmm.
with that caveat that if student comment is full, there will be 5 slots available night of. You will be placed within public comment. I don't see any problem with that. I want to encourage student engagement. I think it's a great opportunity. I've been impressed by a couple of the student speakers that we've had already this year. And I want them to know that there is the opportunity for them to be heard. I like the fact that the board is sending that message to our students. And it's still, if only 2 sign up, there will be 3 additional slots available for the public. So I think it's a great compromise.
Ms. Rich?
So since I'm sending emails to all that sign up and get slots or don't get slots, should I put in that, would that email to the students, say we get 7 students that want to sign up pre-register, would that email include to the 2 that can't sign up, you're more than welcome to come and sign up for the 5 slots that are available in person?
Yeah.
Or send your comments in writing. I think,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it from an Catherine, I'm always trying to keep you in mind. And I think one of the things would be, it would be good for you, you'll have a form response, whether they're a student or a community member, and they all get the same response. Like you've either been selected or you haven't. And if you, and really, frankly, in both cases, you may be selected, but your circumstances or your schedule may change. So we always want people to know, if you've been selected and you can't attend, please let us know, and you're still welcome to submit your comments digitally. I just think we need to keep letting people know about the ability to submit written comments as well as come same day, but to notify us if they can't attend and they've been assigned a slot.
Yep. I like that, in that you just put the standard disclaimer at the bottom that says, if the letter says, unfortunately, you're not selected to speak at this meeting, bottom says, however, there are 5 slots available to sign up day of meeting, or you may submit your comments, via email. But it's just standard for everybody.
Ms. Tribbles, we will reopen public comment after we've concluded the discussion on and we're approaching the end of the discussion on this section, so we'll be getting to the public comments relatively soon.
Okay, thank you.
The couple of other discussion items under this section. Do we want to reconsider the random drawing versus first come, first serve? I've articulated the challenges that I see with random drawing. I think first come, first serve, emails are time-stamped. It will make it very easy for Ms. Rich to, administratively, these are the first 5 people, or these are the first 10 people, or whatever the number are. I think that makes it simpler. I would not recommend making a change to that. But again, I will defer to Ms. Gallagher and Mr. Rose.
I prefer not to make a change at this time. I think we try out what we've put in place for now and see how it goes.
Agreed.
So in terms of, for the public same day sign up, the question, the very first question I think we got was, well, how do we administer that? I think, my recommendation is we have a Chromebook. We've got lots of them with the form at the entrance to the board space, and the first person who walks in, who wants to do public comment, they fill out the form. The form is going to be very simple because now we're untying it from the agenda item. All they're putting in is their demographic information. And then we don't have to try and interpret signatures. We've got them, we've got the number signed up. I think we just let them use the form, but in the boardroom.
I love that idea.
I can't take credit for it. It was something Dr. Sergo had said to me, I think, at the very first board meeting I attended.
Yeah, I think the benefit of that, not to like my own idea, but the benefit of that is if we need to funnel everyone into the electronic form, it will assist not only President Johnson or Vice President Rose, as you are managing public comment, but it'll help Catherine. And so I think it'll reduce some of the We have some challenges sometimes with legibility and some other things. And so I think it'll just, no matter what, when you come in, and we just need to make a note to talk to our technology team to get some dedicated Chromebooks that will allow people to sort of sign up when they walk in electronically. And of course, we might want to ask Sabrina Nail as our ombuds to maybe man that table and make sure that she can assist people who may have any issues.
And then how will the final list be presented? Will it be on board docs? Will it populate, or will we print out a final sheet?
So what it looks, so on the back end, when it's assuming, I'm going to assume that we're still in Google. We may go to a different platform, but in every case on the user end, Catherine will be able to see essentially a spreadsheet that'll populate with all the responses, the time it was, created, the time that the person signed up, all of the information. In board docs, what I have seen, we can take a different approach, is much like, there's an agenda item and then the attachments that go with those agenda items are captured. Essentially in the section that says public comment, you'll now see like each person's name will look the way our agenda items look. So it'll say, Dean Rose, and if I click on it, your written comments would be listed. It will not depict the oral comments, but there would now be a place on board docs for any written comments by the individual name. I hope that answers your question.
Well, I guess I'm asking night of, people are coming in to sign up. How will President Johnson be, how will she have a list?
Oh, we could print it or have it shared with her, however she wants it, electronic or print. But Mr. Blivis is working on the actual form, and so we just look at the best way to do it.
Excuse me. So the last two pieces, do we still want to deprioritize speakers who spoke in the prior session? So I spoke yesterday. That means at June 28th, I go to the bottom of the list of those who are eligible to speak. That's what we had recommended previously. Do we want to maintain that? The rationale behind that was that we want to make sure as many voices as possible are heard, and it would mean that just because I can click first every single time, like I'm the first person, I'm super fast with that submit button, it doesn't mean that I'm always going to be the first person to speak. In a world where we have 12 speakers, it's going to end up not making a difference because everyone's still going to get a chance to speak. In a world where we have 50 speakers, then it becomes an issue. What direction would you like to go?
I'd prefer to keep it as we have it written. And to your point, it's only going to be an issue really when we have a substantial number of people who are signing up for comment. And we've had people who, have made comments recently. So I'd like to keep it the way that we have now and acknowledge that, hopefully it's not too much of an issue, except for when we have a substantial number of people signing up for comment.
Well, and I would just say, to add, Ms. Gallagher, I think there may be some misinformation in the public about the idea that we weren't going to allow in these revisions people who've spoken before to speak again. And that's not at all what the language says. I mean, someone could come and speak every single meeting that they'd like. The only exception is if we have more in-person demand, we would look at it like prioritization. And I think that's important for the public to know. Is we hope we have a lot of folks who are regularly present. As Mr. Rose likes to share, he often was himself. So we don't want to restrict that participation or engagement. And I just think that's important for the public to know.
Right. So we're not deprioritizing. If somebody is consistently signing up, we would only make that adjustment if we had too many people for the slots available. But otherwise, if you're the second person to sign up and we only have 7 speakers, that second slot is yours.
And then the last piece is the discretion in extending the 60-minute time limit. When we approached this with the idea we're trying to take discretion out and make it these are our rules, make them very easy to follow. If we had done that last night, we would not have gotten the last 2 speakers. Because last night we had 12 speakers that worked out to about 36, or a little bit more, minutes, given it takes a little time to transition from speaker to speaker. We would not have gotten all 12 in last night. So do we want to return to, there's discretion to extend the time if there are less than, 1 or 2 more speakers, or just leave it discretion of the board to extend the time based on, on the past experience? Or do we want to continue with, no, 60 minutes is 60 minutes. We have other ways for people to provide public comment, and we're going to stand firm on that because we need to get through our business meeting.
I think communication is key here. The difference being in that we are setting a number of slots. 20 slots is 20 slots. If we just said last night, there's 20 slots, everyone would have spoken. It wouldn't have mattered discretion or not. So 20 slots are available, 60 minutes. I don't like that. I think discretion actually adds confusion among the board. This will add some consistency. We have to communicate that everyone who wishes to speak on an action item will be given the opportunity to speak. So it's important that we communicate to the public that when there's an action item on the agenda, they frankly don't even have to sign up. Mm-hmm. They will be given the opportunity to speak on all action items taken by the board. We are also offering the community listening sessions. So I believe we are actually broadening the opportunity to hear from our community while maintaining a workable agenda to get our work done in a timely manner while still hearing from a significant portion of our community. We're gonna encourage written comment, which right now in redistricting, we are getting inundated by redistricting comment, which is great. Started a file folder. I mean, that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. So, and we'll be having community forums to talk about. So we will be doing on hot topic items. We will be doing that. And I hope our community listening sessions become something that people take advantage of to come and speak with us. So long story short, I think we should stick 60 minutes, 20 slots.
Ms. Gallagher?
Ditto. Yeah. And actually, I think we would have had enough time last night because several speakers didn't take their full 3 minutes either. So, and since we're reducing the speaking time for everybody to 3 minutes, no more 5 minutes. I mean, I think we're at a good compromise place. So I'm with Mr. Rose on this one.
Okay. Well, so that covers all of the things that we were asked to look at. I will incorporate revisions into the policy. I will, I'll find a way to reflect them so you can see that these are the changes to the changes, and we will get this back on the agenda for a second reading on June 28th. So Ms. Gallagher, we do have a few people who've indicated an interest in public comment. Ms. Butler was the first to respond in the chat. Ms. Tibbles had raised her hand. I don't know if Ms. Van Herkson also, or Ms. Addie Sadowski, or Ms. Ebony are also interested in comment. Ms. Van Herkson did post a comment in the chat, and that may be what she wanted to share, but I will turn the floor back over to you to administer the public comment.
Okay, great. So yes, we, if you can, I'm going to ask Ms. Butler to speak first, since she did put her name in the chat as wanting to offer public comment. And then I will have Ms. Tibbles. And then if anybody else is interested in offering comments, please drop your name in the chat so that we can see that you're interested in speaking. I am going to read our public comment statement and also just remind everybody that we are recording the meeting. So let me get to my public comment statement. As in board meetings, the board committees welcome and encourages public comment with the exception of confidential and personnel matters and issues pending appeals to a local or state board. Individuals may speak about matters relating to the school system. If you have specific concerns relating to the actions of staff members, such concerns may be communicated to the superintendent, who will address the concern with appropriate staff. If the concern is about the superintendent, an individual may share that concern with the board through written or private verbal communication. Public comment is not intended to be a question and answer platform with the board or this committee. Generally, the board will not respond to the comments made. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and I will put a timer on my phone, I guess, because I'm not sure if there's a function in Google Meet to set the time. So we will get started with Ms. Butler. And I'm sorry, did somebody? Nope. Okay, so I am going to set a timer for 3 minutes, and Ms. Butler, you may come off mute and begin your comments.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Vera Pack Butler, and I would stop by today because I have some concerns, and I'm not sure where to voice the concerns. I have been dealing with issues with my kids in the school system that deal with racism and the N-word being used, and staff using the N-word and being moved from one location to the next. And we're trying to figure out what policies are in place and what policies are being followed to help keep the students safe. We've had several meetings with staff in the school to no avail. And so I'm here today trying to bring the concern to your attention to find out how to better protect the students. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. Ms. Tibbles?
Hi, can everybody hear me? Okay. I just wanted to quickly come on and say that I'm not a big fan of limiting public comment, because there's a lot of people out there that have a lot to say. And when they show up in force at your meetings, I literally think that is why you all are elected to the office that you are. I think that if you wanted to be on the Board of Education, you should be ready and willing when the public needs to speak to you and take time out of their day and their evening to come to the meetings and sign up and wait hours and hours to speak, that you should entertain every single person's right to speak. I think also that there was the idea that you were going to pick and choose who could come or who could speak at the meetings, in that you were going to put people that speak at one meeting at the bottom of the list for the next meeting, which again, I don't think that's fair. I think everything should be first come, first serve. The people that want to speak, are making an absolute effort to rearrange their lives to show up in front of you to speak. So I think those people should be given the opportunity to speak at every single meeting. I mean, this is basically infringing on people's right to free speech, because that is a right that we are all given, and that's a right that we all have. So to take that away and say, well, you're just going to get moved to the bottom of the next meeting because you've been here before, is completely unfair. You were elected to this office, so I'm sorry that you have to, stay there till late hours of the night, but I know you recognize my face, and I know that I have been there right along with you. I'm waiting just as long as you are to, make comment, to hear everybody's comments, to hear what the board is doing. I think that it is something that is part of your position, and I think that it's what needs to be done. You're part of the board for the Frederick County Public Schools, and we are the public, and we want to make our voices heard, and we want you to hear us. And I think it's only fair that you hear us every single time, not just in written comments, but speaking with you face to face at board meetings. I wasn't quite sure I understood if there are slots that are deferred, whether students don't show up or whatnot, how that was going to be distributed. I thought I heard first come, first serve, but I wasn't sure about that. So you might want to clarify that for the public, but I guess other than that, it's very disheartening to think that this board is going to start limiting people from saying what they need to say. I mean, this poor woman here, Ms. Butler, she said what she needed to say, and she needed to. So, if there was no time for her to be heard, then she wouldn't have been able to bring these to your attention. And if she had come to a meeting and had waited hours with this new policy of, no, we're not going to take any more public comment, she would never have been heard. So, some people need this time to come and say what they need to say. So I hear you. So that's really what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Ms. Van Hertzen, I think, said she did want to make some comments, but she's been having some connectivity issues. Ms. Van Hertzen, do you want to try to come off mute and share your comments?
No. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
No? Okay. Sorry, I'm in a road trip in France, so it's hard to, the connection stuff. But
okay.
I'm echoing Vera's statements. I'm a FCPS mom. I have a Black son that attends Linganore. He's attended other, he's also attended TJ. And I feel that there's no policies really stating like consequences that happens when there's hate speech at school. I've asked, like, okay, I want to know like where we're starting, like where do the consequences start? And the anti-racist policy, I believe it doesn't really state consequences. It's like, here are the forms to fill out when something happens. The policy that I was sent when it comes to consequences, it says race one time in the whole policy. And basically the category that I'm looking at is the bullying category, and it starts with a tier 1. So that means like, if my son gets called the gorilla or the N-word at school, the first step is like, oh, you can talk to the counselor about it. Well, no, I feel like there needs to be a true anti-racist policy with consequences, not just for students, but for staff as well. And unless I haven't found it, but I have not seen any policy that has teeth that really like shows the consequences that will happen when these situations happen at school. Because my son is, 16 years old, and both schools that he's attended at FCPS, he does not feel safe. He feels that he cannot be himself. He does not participate in school activities. He basically keeps his head down. He's quiet, and he doesn't want to stir. And I also feel that currently there's a lot of responsibility on the victim to like state names. They've told my son, if you want consequences to happen to the student, you have to file a report. He's been sitting in an office. They've given him a notepad. They're like, write the names, like if he's in a police station or something. And I feel that there's too much responsibility on the victim when this is happening rampant. If you talk to students of color, it's a rampant situation. So my plea is just for more consequences in policy, actual things that will happen to staff and students if these situations arise and these incidents happen. That's it.
Thank you. And I don't know if you're able to see the chat, but Miss Sabrina Nail, who is the ombuds for FCPS, has shared her contact information as well. And so if you'd like some more specific follow-up on some of the comments, her email is ombuds, it's ombuds@fcps.org. And I see that we have another hand up. Miss Addie, and I'm sorry, I can't read the full.
It's Addie. Greetings. It's
Addie Sadowski, yes.
Sadowski, yes. Ghanaian and Polish. The long story, but that's not here. I'm going to piggyback off Ms. Verna and Melissa. Those are my parental colleagues. I apologize about the noise. I'm multitasking. I'm working, but this is also just as important. My son has actually been one of the victims in an FCPS school because it was due to some of his, leadership that he showed at the tender age of 13 is why some of us parents are here in front of you folks today. And I'm also going to piggyback on Ms. Trudy's comment about the availability and the of being able to be heard. Everyone reserves, and every person, I don't care what your background is, reserves the right to be heard. So when those rights are limited, it makes it very difficult. We're not talking about teenagers or college students who have been in the world and kind of have a lay of the land of how life really is, the reality of life of being a Black and brown child. We're talking about babies that are being harassed, not just, and it's happening by staff. They're being retaliated against for actually doing the right thing. The whole objective about being part of the education board is to help these children. As parents, we do the best that we can, and especially as minority parents, some of us have, because it's a struggle that we live with every day. So imagine, if you will, it's compounded. My son is doing the right thing, but he's a victim. And this went on during the course of the school year in particular. It's been going on for years, but particularly the school year, because he's coming into his own as a young man. He can't respond. So we have to speak for them. Because when they actually go to authority within the school, they're retaliated against and turned on. Ms. Butler and I went to a school to have a sit down, and we were literally ushered out the door and told the staffer will stay on staff, and that's that. It is what it is. That's literally what we were told. So we come here because we need help. And we need you all, as our representatives, as our advocates as we're advocating for our children. And that's all I wanted to say. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And I see Ebony has also raised her hand. So you may come off mute and start your public comment.
Good afternoon, or good morning, I'm sorry. I am just joining. I didn't initially have a plan to speak or comment, but I'm here in support of the other parents that have just spoken as we've met regarding this issue at Linganore High School in particular, out of great concern, obviously, with the event with involving the seniors. That was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, essentially. But as you can hear, this is a long-standing issue. I have students in the middle school age range and also in the elementary age range. And my comment, once again, is here in support of them and also questioning what rises to the level of urgency to make a problematic school an agenda item that will allow the public to come address that particular school as a problem. And also what tools or what responses will be in place to address schools that are failing in the area of response and their handling of discrimination and harassment, really, is what has been described here. So I really want to emphasize the fact that the need for this board really properly addressing not just beyond the policy, FCPS policy as a whole, but when a problematic school is being identified, when there are hands being raised and voices that are shouting to the rooftop saying that there is a problem over here, how do they become agenda items so that the public can respond and also encourage and force a response from the board as appropriate? Because this is clearly a longstanding issue. And, parents like ourselves, we're not going to sit quietly. So we're trying to do this the most diplomatic way possible. And I'm here to support that effort by however possible. So I'll just leave it at that. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And Ms. Green.
Hi, I'm Miss Green. Or Miss Sterling, actually. I am a FCPS parent and educator, but I just wanted to piggyback off what Dr. Butler and Miss Na and Ebony shared, just speaking about what's kind of going on here in our feeder pattern. I think that one of the things they've addressed, very well and very eloquently spoke about the biggest issue, but I also would like to talk about and ask the board to specifically look at and help support us in encouraging diversity amongst hiring and the staff, because we need safe spaces for our children to go to. I know my daughter has worked really hard to advocate and is graduated as a senior. However, there's still work to be done. And I think that it's a lot of weight to put on a student. And I worry and I'm concerned, but it's even more difficult when we have littles coming into those buildings at 13 and 14, and that's a lot to put on them. So I would appreciate if you guys would take a look at considering whatever you can to encourage diversity hires and to support our students in having safe spaces, safe people continued now that senior group is gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sergo. I think that's everybody who indicated a desire to offer comments this morning. Mr. Rose, you're on mute.
Well, I just kind of in relation to what we've been talking about today in policy, I think this is a outstanding example of how people are looking for ways to share their comments for us. I mean, this is a policy committee meeting, and credit to these young ladies who took the opportunity to be heard, even though that wasn't the focus of this meeting. So it speaks to the fact that there are a number of people out there who can't come to meetings. They can't stand outside for hours and line up. And that's why I feel strongly about the edits we're making to this policy, that we're going to give people an opportunity to engage with us through our community listening sessions, to provide written comment to us, to sign up online and give them the opportunity, because there are too many people that cannot come and set up a lawn chair at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in order to be first in line. So while I fully support what we're doing with this policy, I look forward to staying even more flexible. I think some others have mentioned it, that I look forward to the day where we're able to offer video comments at our board meetings, because I want to be as inclusive to these folks and the concerns that they have. It is 2023. And I think there are a number of different vehicles in which people can engage with us. It doesn't all have to be in person and in front of us. So I want to thank these young ladies who chose to come on here and share these difficult topics. So I appreciate that. I hope you were all able to get the information that Dr. Sergo posted there, and Ms. Gallagher, regarding reaching out to our ombud, Sabrina Nail, and so that we can bring together all of this. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that we have some upcoming things on our agenda. We have our student code of conduct, which Dr. Dyson is very excited to be presenting. And there will be a discussion about the anti-racism policy and some areas around that, as well as we are having our annual report from our Racial Equity Committee will be coming up. I believe that's going to be in early September. I believe we originally had it on the calendar for August, but they've asked to move it to September. So there are going to be a number of opportunities to engage with the public on this topic. So I just wanted to, we often don't respond, but I felt this is important to share that there are going to be opportunities, and I wanted to make sure you knew the resources were out there for you to share your concerns, and I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And I look forward to connecting with anyone that would like to discuss this in more detail, and we can talk about how to navigate this and collaborate. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, I agree. And I think similarly, when we're thinking about our community listening sessions, we might want to also consider a virtual option, and perhaps during the day when it might be a more accessible format for some of our families or community members to participate. So I think it's a great point that we need to be considering flexibility and accessibility as well. So thank you. Okay, well, I think that takes us to the end of our agenda and time together. So thank you everybody for joining us. Hopefully you have some information that you can follow up with Ms. Nail, and she'll follow back up with you about potential additional resources. And so we thank you for your time, and we will officially adjourn our policy committee meeting for this morning. Thank you.